Congressman Goldman, what exactly are you demanding the Chief Justice do?
Well, I and 17 other former prosecutors and judges who are now members of Congress are essentially trying to put Chief Justice Roberts to his word. He has said in a number of different ways and times that he and the Supreme Court is policing itself about its own allegations of ethical impropriety. But we have not seen anything of the sort. There's been no meaningful investigations done of any of the numerous allegations about Justices Thomas and Alito. And so what we are suggesting and calling on the Chief Justice to do is to say that if you are going to police your own, then you need to do it. And you need to do that with an independent investigative body that can and has the authority to look into these allegations of ethical improprieties and hold justices accountable and be transparent, because right now there's a crisis of legitimacy within the Supreme Court as these allegations continue to stream out.
Your letter points out to the chief something he should already know, that Leonard Leo, when he was paying Clarence Thomas's wife, was part of a amicus brief to the Supreme Court in a case that Justice Thomas ruled on. Justice Thomas did not recuse himself from a case involving the man who was paying his wife.
Yes, and that's one of a number of allegations. Leonard Leo has his fingerprints all over this Supreme Court and many cases that appear in front of the Supreme Court. But we had recent allegations of Justice Alito taking a private plane because apparently the seat would have otherwise gone unused and not disclosing that, which is a violation of their rules. And so we are asking, in addition to an independent investigative body, to also implement an ethics council that can oversee the disclosures that the justices are making to ensure that they are also following the law. The point of this is to essentially call out Justice Thomas, Chief Justice Roberts, rather, and say, listen, you have made a point of saying that the Supreme Court has its own ethics rules, a statement of ethical principles, I think he calls it. But if that's the case, then we and the public need to understand that it's being followed. And if not, then Congress should act. But in the meantime, if you're serious about this, then you should be investigating these allegations related to Leonard Leo and Clarence Thomas's wife, or related to Clarence Thomas's or his wife's role in January 6th, even though Clarence Thomas has ruled on cases involving the same subject matter. An other Hobby Lobby case in 2014 that Justice Alito ruled on, and there was a significant New York Times investigation with email corroboration. The Supreme Court wrote back to Congress in a one-page letter basically saying, well, Justice Alito denies it, so that's where we are. That's not an investigation. That does not instill confidence that the Supreme Court is policing itself. And if they are going to do that in their last gasp attempt before Congress has to pass laws, then they need to do it properly. And that's what this letter is calling on.